Hello, everyone. It is your boy Predator 626268 once again, bearing before you the black screen of tedium, long-winded discussions, and depravity. Yes, once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to inflict you, yes, you, the unfortunate viewing audience at home, with another one of my patented tier list videos, which happen to be very depressing for me because they're simultaneously both the most popular content that I do, and I'm sure they're probably some of the most divisive because of just how fucking long they can get. I don't blame people for not liking these videos, but at the same time, they seem to attract some attention. Any publicity is good publicity, baby. I don't know. But, anyways, once again, we are delving deep into a tier list thing. And this tier list is going to be interesting because I do want to branch out. Because one of the reasons I like doing tier lists is to branch out to discussions I normally wouldn't talk about when I'm doing let's plays and walkthroughs and all that sort with my games. And that's just the things that I like, and movies, everything. Yes, I am spreading myself thinner than watered down butter, but at the same time, it gets views. I don't know. I've got ADD real bad, especially creative wise. But today we're going to be doing the topic of today's tier list, which is I'm going to go through and rank every single Bond villain that's been in all 25 James Bond movies. Little background, never grew up with Bond at all, actually. I never watched any of the James Bond films when I was a kid. My parents weren't necessarily interested in them. I didn't have friends who were super interested in them. I think I played a couple video games when I was growing up. I know I had Agent Under Fire. I did. I think I played through Nightfire and GoldenEye Rogue Agent as well. But for the most part, I just I understood James Bond as the staple of pop culture iconography. Just never watched any of the characters' movies until 2 years ago. I want to say it's either 2 years ago or last year. It doesn't matter. When I actually sat down and decided to start watching all of his all of the James Bond films, wherever I could, and now that I've finally completed the entire quintology times five, I guess I don't know what exactly you'd call it. Um, the entire collection of films, I'm going to go through and rank all the villains from all the films uh, in in uh, in this tier list right here. This very comprehensive, very extensive tier list. Yeah, this is going to be fun. Um, going to be very fun actually going through 25 films of supporting main and everything in between antagonistic roles. I don't like talking about bad guys. Surprisingly enough, because I think villains are the most interesting part of a story. Go figure, right? So, as far as criteria of how this goes, I don't really have a set, like, quantifiable list of what I can pinpoint down exactly with all these villains, as it were. Um, Not because I can't think like that. It's just easier for me to be off the cuff with my thoughts on this sort of thing. But I guess I will break it down into um there are six tiers here, and I'm going to break these tier lists. I'm actually going to break it down by tier list. So, top two tiers are obviously going to be for the villains that have everything going for them. They've got great motivations, great performances, great personalities, intimidation factor slash entertainment factor, overall enhance the quality of the film and make the entering question as good as it is, or possibly could be. Middle two tiers are going to be for the villains that are either solid, but not solid enough to quite rise up to the other two tiers because of a factor, maybe a couple mitigating factors. It's hard to say, or they're just kind of there. They exist. They're not really memorable. They're not awful, but they're not, you know, great either. They're filler. And then the bottom two tiers are for the villains that I think either could have been really solid but are executed poorly, are bland and generic enough to almost be borderline insulting in their complete lack of presence, or just completely irredeemably fucking awful and the absolute worst way. Like like so awful that they actively bring the movie down with them. It's astounding how bad they are. So that's the only criteria that I've really got that's cognizant to a certain degree. Also, I know this list is kind of in alphabetical order. I'm going to actually go through it via film order instead because I think that's a lot easier than trying to figure out where the fuck was this character come from. Oh yeah, that's right. Instead, and as with all my tier list videos, it's just my opinion. Okay, these are all just my thoughts. You're free to agree or disagree. Totally up to you. But with all that said, let's get started. Shall we? And I am going to be drinking soda throughout this, so bear with me for a second. First up, let's start off from the beginning with Dr. No. And I guess fitting enough, we should start with Dr. No, the man himself. It's really hard for me to say anything negative about Dr. No, really. Not because he's terrible, but I also don't think he's that memorable. It's really kind of hard for me to speak negatively about Dr. No in general simply because being the first film out of 25 in a very, very long running franchise, you always have to cut the first entry some form of slack, especially for a long running franchise, just given how times have changed, technology has changed, um, the techniques we've used have evolved and all that. So, especially in the case of Doctor No, um, I don't think it's a bad film at all. I still think most of it holds up even 60 years later. Jesus Christ, think of how long that is. Fucking 60 years, man. But at the same time, it's hard to not argue that it does feel comparatively bare bones in question with regards to the other films of the franchise. And I think Doctor No is kind of the perfect exemplary sort of um, tentpole in what I'm talking about. He's I mean, he hits all the notes that you'd expect a Bond villain to hit. He's very charismatic. He's very well spoken. He's very intelligent. You know, got the backstory of him. You know, trying to escape from relationships between the Chinese and the Americans, and now he wants to wage war against both because of what he sees as both of them being corrupt from a secret lair, and he's got metal hands to replace the real ones that got cut off long ago. All that's fine. I think Joseph Wiseman, the actor who plays him, does a very solid job of giving him this dignified, quiet air, and have the proper amount of sinisterness to him, I guess. I don't even know if that's a word or not. Fucking, I'll make it a word. Um, but at the same time, there's nothing really that memorable, at least in comparison to a lot of the other main villains. For what he is, for the movie that he's in, I think he is solid enough. Um, but at the same time, compared to other main villains, he's not as bad as some of the other villains I can easily name that have become the main crux of the film. At the same time, there's nothing to differentiate himself from one of the greats. He's just, yeah, he's an average villain. I don't hate him. But I don't put him as one of the greats either. He's very middle of the road. Let's just put it that way. Um, Next villain on the list. Yeah, Mr. Dent, the geologist living in Jamaica that works for Spectre. That I can't even say anything memorable about him. No, I can't say one memorable thing about him, and that is he's got a great death scene. You know, when he sneaks into Bond's quarters at night. By the way, I'm just going to spoil all the films. So if you haven't watched any of the Bond films, get off this video right now. Should preface that. You know, when he goes into Bond's villa with the silenced pistol and shoots at his bed, and then they have that sort of degree of talking to each other, and then he grabs the pistol and tries to shoot it, and realizes he's out of ammo, which leads to probably my favorite Sean Connery moment that he's ever done, where he just kind of stares at him and is like, "What's a Smith and Wesson? You've had your shix," and he just plugs him right then and there. That was the moment that really kind of sold me on Sean Connery as Bond. You know, not his famous introduction that everybody knows, but that was the scene that really convinced me. Okay, this guy actually does have what it takes to be this character. Because you gotta understand, my memories of Sean Connery are not of Bond; they're of all the films he made later in his life. Um, Leave Extraordinary Gentleman was the one I associated with for a long time. I'm embarrassed to say, but I also associated him as, Dr. Jones Sr. from Last Crusade, or oh God, what's his character's name from The Rock? John Mason. That's it. And they're great characters, but they're not. Sean Connery is Bond to a lot of people. He still is Bond to a lot of people. I just never associated him with Bond, in all honesty, for the longest time. But that was the moment of him just plugging the poor doctor with that cold, callous sense of professionalism that made me sell on him. So for that alone, the good doctor is an average villain. He is saved. He is saved by one good scene. Otherwise, I'd probably put him a tier lower. Next up, it from Doctor No is oh, where is she? Ah, Miss Tarot, that's her name. Standard boilerplate stuff in my opinion, just the charming seductress that works for the enemies that's trying to get into Bond's pants to let his guard down and kind of leads him on and everything. She's all right. Well, no, not all right, but nothing memorable about her at all. Not grating, but still. And then finally, the Three Blind Mice. I honestly don't have any problem with it. I think that they're only in the film for about maybe 10 minutes. I want to say, but certainly leave a memorable impact. These three assassins, kind of. portraying themselves as blind, impoverished, homeless people just walking around doing their little thing, and they're assassins in real life, assassins actually that kind of are faking it to a certain degree to give themselves cover. And the scene where they're chasing Bond in that big like 40s Cadillac hearse while he's in the fucking what's that car called? Sunbeam Tiger, I want to say. Yeah, because this was before the famous DB5. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're pretty solid. They have a small role in the film, but what small role they have, I actually say they're pretty solid, pretty good. They are memorable. I will say that much. Next movie we're gonna move on to is From Russia with Love, which is my absolute favorite movie of um Sean Connery's actually. Uh, Easily my top five favorite Bond films of all time, I would say. I love From Russia with Love quite a bit. So let us start with um was- ah yeah, Blofeld was in this one. It's a serviceable introduction to Blofeld, I would say. I mean, him in the shadows, him stroking the cat, talking in cryptic tongues about how he must assassinate Mr. Bond and all that stuff, It it it's it's a solid introduction. I don't think it's the best introduction that Blofeld has ever had, nor do I think it's going to be the best portrayal of Blofeld there's ever going to be, but it is fairly serviceable as far as giving us an introduction into Ernst Stavro Blofeld as a villain. It works. I just don't think it's um you know uh, uh, again, serviceable. That's all I can say is just serviceable. Next up is here we are. Dr. Rosa Klebb. There's not a whole lot I can say negatively about her, but at the same time, there's not something. I mean, she is sort of memorable enough in at least the earlier parts of the film where she's explaining the effects of the what is it, this like the whatever super soldier project they're trying to do. Definitely has that kind of stern um look about her. Um, but at the same time, she kind of disappears for a good chunk of the film after a while, not really leaving an impact. And then she shows up at the end where she tries to kill Bond with a fucking shoe knife of all things, and then ends up getting stabbed in the back by fucking Tatiana Romanova. Jesus Christ. These names sometimes. Of all people. So that kind of detracts from her a little bit, I would say. Actually detracts a lot from her character. The fact that you're gonna try and kill Bond with one of the most impractical weapons ever, and then you get killed by his love interest by Bond's conquest of the weak of all things. It takes you down a couple notches, I would think. But it's hard to say that she's a terrible villain, but just for that alone, I probably would have to put her in average. Next up is where is he? Good old Red Grant. I am putting him top of the tier list, and it's you can't blame me for doing that if you're a Bond fan. I really, honestly, do think that Red Grant is still one of the best, if not the best, dragons ever when it comes to Bond villains. I mean, you're talking about a character so iconic in his look, in his performance, and in his role that he has inspired countless XPs and ripoffs and homages to him both in Bond and beyond Bond as a franchise. And it's not hard to see why that is. I mean, you got this big guy who's impervious to pain. He has this great opening introduction where, you know, you think that he's killed Bond, but it's a training exercise, and you see just how stoic he all is. And then we get to the famous train confrontation later in the film, where he's got the gun pointed at Bond, and Bond's trying to find a way to get out of it because, he's got the upper hand with everything there and is just being very smug and egotistical, rightfully so. I would imagine in that scenario, but there is a lot of tension in that particular moment. It's probably my absolute favorite moment out of all the Connery films. It's just that confrontation on the train between James Bond and Red Grant, because there's so much palpable tension to it, and both Sean Connery and Robert Shaw put the absolute best into the performances of each of these characters. Like Robert Shaw's performance is probably one of the best performances of his entire short acting career. I mean, he is so smug and so callous and very intimidating as Red Grant, that he makes that character so memorable just through his performance alone. Not just in how he speaks, but the mannerisms, how he projects himself. He is one for the history books. He is one for the history books. I don't think, because every other Bond villain, or not every other Bond villain, or not every Bond film, but a lot of Bond films have done, the tall, blonde haired, 6 foot plus kind of henchman that tends to be very mute for the most part and not say a whole lot. And outside of one of them, I don't think any film has come close to being a better Red Grant than Red Grant was. So that's why he is in top spot on the list. I feel like there's another villain and From Russia with Love that I'm missing at this point. Um, let me just look through here, thumb everything. Not seeing it, actually. Not seeing it at all. Huh, interesting. Anyways, let us move on to Goldfinger, which in my opinion it's all right. I mean, I know a lot of people have it as their favorite Bond film. It's really the film that put James Bond on the map. We've been parodying it countless times. Every movie since has tried to capture its lightning in the bottle, and I think only a couple have succeeded in that regard. It's hard to overstate the cultural impact that Goldfinger has had. I just don't think it's my favorite of the James Bond films. I do kind of prefer the more grounded Cold War era tension, very minimalistic approaches to Connery's first two films. This is kind of where it starts introducing a lot of the fantastical and technological and the one-liners and everything, and kind of loses the starts. I don't think it loses the tone when it does that, but a lot of future films would abuse those sorts of elements. I know they're iconic. I just sometimes they kind of get in the way for me personally for my enjoyment, but everybody has their taste. And I guess let's start off with the main man of the hour. Where is that fat bastard? Where is that fat bastard anyway? There's Goldfinger. Uh, he's fine, I guess. I don't know. I mean, he's a man obsessed with gold. He's got gold everything. He wants to nuke the world's gold supply so that he can have the best gold supply, and that Everything's devalued. It seems ridiculous and preposterous on the surface. I don't think that his actual villain motivations hold up all that well. In all honesty, it really does come off as pretty freaking stupid. Um, and his performance, I know he was dubbed in by another guy because the actor who was playing him, the physical actor who was playing him, had a very thick accent and couldn't speak English very well. But there's nothing memorable that he really says outside of the iconic. Do you expect me to talk? No, Mister Bond. I expect you to die. Outside of that one famous line that's been parodied and referenced and lampooned to and from infinity and beyond, as it were. I honestly don't think he's that memorable of a villain. He's not that intimidating. His motivations make no sense. His acting is serviceable, just not fantastic. And I'm not just trying to like denigrate it because it's from 1964. There's plenty of good acting in films way older than I am. I'm not saying that at all, but at the same time, he's you would expect for a film as iconic as Goldfinger that Goldfinger himself should be a bit more memorable. I never thought he was that memorable of a character. There's nothing egregiously wrong with who he is, but considering sort of what film he's a part of and the impact that film has had, you expect him to have more punch. So, you know what? I'll be merciful. I'll put him in the average category. Um, Speaking of memorable, let's go to where is he? Ah, there we go. Odd Job. The famous Mr. Odd Job, the big Japanese guy who doesn't speak much and kills people by throwing his bowler hat at them. I mean, I know we've made fun of Odd Job so many times. So many times people made fun of Odd Job and him throwing his hat everywhere. Who throws a shoe? I mean, honestly. But I'll admit, I honestly do think Oddjob is still a very solid villain for himself. Again, he doesn't have to say much, but Harold Sakata has a really great physical presence to his acting. I think it's really a testament to characters who don't have a whole lot of dialogue, but convey everything that they do through the motions and their facial expressions and how they act. I think physical acting is one of those art forms that a lot of people either don't really notice or kind of take for granted when it comes to certain performances. I think there is a real skill to pulling that off. And he pulls it off with Oddjob very well. I mean, okay, big giant Japanese man throwing a razor sharp bowler hat at people with impeccable accuracy in some cases. It's fucking stupid on the surface of it. But the fact that he manages to have this very stern demeanor to him honestly makes the fact that even though he has been parodied still really effective. So I'm going to put him in the great category in all honesty. I don't think he's one of the best henchmen that the Bond films have had, but he is nowhere near one of the worst that the Bond films have had. Um, Anything else on this list? Oh, this guy. Forgot about this guy. He was in From Russia with Love. In the previous film, I think he was a Spectre agent or something. Got killed on a yacht or something. Whatever. That should kind of tell you everything. I don't remember this guy. What was his name? Like Kozrov or something? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what other Goldfinger characters that there are. I'm not seeing any. I might have a couple leftover characters at the end of it. I know I'm gonna have a couple leftover characters at the end of it. Bear with me. Um, let's move on. Um, Good old Thunderball is the next film. Um, I'll be honest, I really don't care for Thunderball at all. Um, Partly it's also because of age. I think it's nowhere near as inventive as it was back then, and I think a lot of the aspects and attributes of it have been parodied to death and everything, so it's very hard for me to take it seriously. But the problem is that I get really bored watching Thunderball because there's not a whole lot going on. I mean, I like a good slow burn, especially in a thriller, but I honestly think the burn is a bit too slow, in my opinion. Not helped by the underwater sequences, which fucking drag for God knows how long. Um, sorry. So yeah, not one of my personal favorite entries. To me, Thunderball was kind of the point when Sean Connery's tenure as Bond really did start to have a noticeable valley show up. Um, so let's move on with good old Amelia Largo here. Um, yeah, yeah, I hate to say it. You'd think for a guy whose general appearance has been parodied to hell and back in all kinds of spy movies and pastiches of spy movies and thrillers, you know, the big number two guy with the eye patch, wearing an eye patch, you know, you'd expect him to be a much more memorable character. He's really not, in all honesty. He's not over the top enough to be memorable as kind of this bombastic spectacle of a baddie, but at the same time, he's not subtle enough to be a really kind of low key, effective schemer, snake, whatever aspect you want. I mean, the guy who plays him and the guy who voiced him, you know, he's obviously trying his best. He does not come off as memorable as he should. He is so forgettable. It's not even funny. Outside of the fact that oh, he wears a suit and he wears an eye patch. That's about the only thing I can tell you about him as a character. Is that he wears a suit and wears an eye patch. Whoop de doo. You know, for like there's nothing memorable, and he's the main antagonist throughout the entire goddamn film. That doesn't bode well at all. Um, hold on a second. I think that might be the wrong. Apparently, yeah, it's the wrong guy. So this guy isn't the the guy I was talking about from Doctor No, the ecologist or the geologist who tries to kill his bond and gets plugged for his troubles. No, he apparently he was also in Thunderball. I again couldn't tell you anything about him, so he's in there. um, oh, there's the guy. Yeah, it's always great when you got all these characters who look exactly the same and there are no names to them. I know all these pictures are stolen from the wiki. That's why I'm going through it on my phone and everything. But um, who else was in that Interval? Oh, where is she? Fucking Fiona Volpe. Where is she? Oh yeah, her. Again, I can't tell you anything about her. Another Bond, um, another seductress, countess type person working for the bad guys and trying to lure Bond into a trap. I think I want to say she ends up getting shot in the back by like a poison dart while her and Bond are dancing because Bond catches up onto her and and puts her in his line of sight so she takes the bullet for him. That's kind of memorable, but at the same time, could I really tell you about it? No. So there you go. you're gonna notice like none of these seem like bad characters on their own, but if you give me nothing to work with in terms of memorability, that to me is just as egregious of a sin, if not more so, than giving me a character who is absolutely just fucking unbearable to deal with. Um, Next up is You Only Live Twice, where Bond is turning Japanese. I really think so. Do 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 do. So let's actually start this off proper with You Only Live Twice with, of course, the famous first appearance of Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Um, again, this appearance of Blofeld has been, parodied and lampooned and lampshaded to death numerous times since he came on screen. On the one hand, I don't hate Blofeld in this movie at all. He is a very memorable presence throughout it. Donald Pleasant's performance is fucking second to none. He is in many ways the definitive version of Blofeld, with with the soft speaking speech patterns and the sort of subtle inflections that make him such a calculated mastermind, Mr. Bond, and all that. He for the 15 minutes he's on screen, he makes the most out of that role and comes off very well for himself. My problem is that he's only in the last 15 minutes of the goddamn movie, and he doesn't get killed in the end. And I know why they did it. The producers wanted to keep making more films. They couldn't have just Bond, you know, Blofeld right then and there. Um, which really sucks considering that a lot of the incarnations of Blofeld that would come after in a lot of the films fucking suck hard. So maybe it would have been better. Uh, and you know, as much of a build, as much as Donald Pleasance completely knocks the role out of the park, you would think for a character who had that much build up across four films up to this point in time, four films, and was always constantly in the shadows, was always constantly, the man behind the curtain and the mastermind behind everything. You'd expect him to have a much more indelible impact than just him showing up at the last 15 minutes, kind of monologuing to Bond a little bit, shooting his henchmen, and then fucking off in like an escape pod or something. Is how it goes. I mean, and the fact that that's basically all that happens, honestly, I do think is disappointing to a very noticeable degree. Really, even though the performance is memorable, the acting's great from him. He leaves an impact. I just want him to do more throughout the entire fucking film. That's one of the problems that I have with You Only Live Twice is that it feels like I'm just waiting until I get to when Blofeld actually finally appears, and then by that time the climax is set in and the movie's almost over. You know, which sucks. So I am honestly, oh, this is going to be controversial, but I'm going to put him in the great category, not the top tier category, simply because of lack of screen time. If he had more screen time throughout the film, I would have bumped him up one slot. But because everything else about him is great, I have no issues with it. But um, yeah, that's about it. Next up is Mr. Osato. Um, where's that dude anyway? Ah, there he is. I couldn't really tell you anything about him, in all honesty. Uh, Japanese contact that works with Blofeld and kind of Inspector. He's charming enough. He's affable enough. The guy who plays him is does a good job. but again, he's not really that memorable. He doesn't leave that much of a strong presence throughout it. But he's not awful. So I'm just gonna put him in the ouch category. Um, Next up is God. I would really have appreciated it if whoever did this put fucking you know things right there. Where is she anyway? Oh, no, there she is. Yeah, her name's Helga Brandt, I want to say. She's the pilot that tries to lure Bond into a death trap and tries to kill Bond by jettisoning out of a plane and letting it crash. And then she gets eaten by piranhas. That's about it. She's got a memorable death scene. I mean, Austin Powers made fun of it to hell and back. Kind of popularized the whole falling into piranhas and getting eaten alive by piranhas sort of thing, which is a pretty nasty fate. Don't get me wrong, but other than that, she's just kind of there. Um, and Hans. Oh, Hans. This motherfucker. Yeah. Because he's basically just a Red Grand clone that does absolutely nothing throughout the movie. I mean, he has no presence. He has no memorable lines. He has no memorable actions. And the guy doing it leaves no impression. I mean, look at that! Look at that face right there. Look at the face that is also there for his character screen on the wiki. Him just doing duck lips. I need to say anything more. Just absolutely the worst. Next up, good old On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Probably one of the most divisive Bond entries that there are. Not that I don't understand why it's divisive. I know there's a greater appreciation for it as time has gone on with the modern um, filmmaking techniques that it's employed with regards to the story, how it handles the mythos, the daring risks that it took. But at the same time, you know, I do think it is a little bit too slow paced and kind of drags on for its own good. George Lazenby as Bond is he is very, very hit and miss throughout that entire film. And I do respect the things that it does. And I do think there are plenty of good elements. And I do appreciate it enough to where I wouldn't put it at the bottom of the list, but I wouldn't say it's one of my all-time favorites. But let's continue on. This is the with Blofeld once again. This is Telly Savalas as Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Very big departure from Donald Pleasance's portrayal of Blofeld. But in all honesty, I know I'm going to get crucified for saying this. I do kind of prefer this version of Blofeld to the You Only Live Twice version of Blofeld. Here's why. First off, he's in the movie. He has a much bigger impact throughout the movie, more and more and more. He's in the movie to a much greater degree. So we really do kind of delve deep into the villainy and who he is as a character and his motivations and everything. I like the idea of him wanting to create chaos throughout the world by brainwashing um, women into sort of becoming these sleeper agents that will, cause chaos and kill people and take out dignitaries all on Spectre's command so that he can attain power and attain um, notoriety, I guess, throughout. That's really interesting. I do like the fact that he is a bit more of a physical version to match Lazenby's version of Bond, who, even if Lazenby was never the best actor, he pulled off the physicality of Bond very well, and I do appreciate that aspect as well, that these two did have a physical presence to them that the other one didn't. And I honestly do think, even if it may not be as memorable, Telly Savalas does a really good job of creating Blofeld to be such this smug, smarmy, slimy little bastard who, despite basically walking around like his shit doesn't stink, also is devious enough to where he actually comes off as a legitimate threat. He's honestly a really, really good, solid version of Blofeld. Yeah, I'll put him in great. Again, he may not be as good, objectively speaking, as the Donald Pleasance version of Blofeld, but I prefer him better as Blofeld for all the reasons that I listed above. You can feel free to disagree with me, but I don't think that he did a disservice to the character. We'll get into the people who did a disservice to the fucking character. Oh, we'll get into them. Next up is where is it? Where is she? Irma Brunt. Is that her? I don't think that's her. God, what is with this fucking list? Not having names is great. I love it. This has to be her. Yeah. I honestly kind of confuse her with what's her name from Russia with Love, Rosa Klebb. Just because they look very similar to each other. She's she's a good presence throughout the film. I wouldn't say she's one of the better um number twos that there are. I think there may be some, maybe others that are more memorable, but I think she does do a good job. And the fact that she does land the killing blow on Tracy at the end of the film, spoilers, that does bump her up just a little bit. That she was responsible for the emotional climax of the film, the very memorable emotional climax of the film. Any villain that does that, just no matter how small they are or how little of a role they may have, there is that. And then there's Grunther. Grunther. That's his name. Thought it was Gunther. Um, I don't remember anything about this guy. That's it. That's it. I got to put him there. Um, next up is Diamonds Are Forever, which is not only my least favorite film of Sean Connery's by far, but also probably my least favorite Bond film by far as well. I fucking hate Diamonds Are Forever. I hate it bad. It is such an insultingly stupid, farcical, just pantomime of what Bond actually is that I'm honestly shocked that the people of 1971 did not fucking riot over this, and how it just led to the very, very bad precedent that we would get into with Roger Moore's era, with it being fucking campy and stupid as hell. It is so insufferable to get through because outside of one fight scene, there is nothing I can think of. Well, also, um, Shirley Bassey's theme song is pretty good in all honesty. But aside from those two elements, there is nothing in Diamonds Are Forever that I would classify as redeemable. Period. It is putrid in its existence. Absolutely fucking putrid. And the start of this putridness is Blofeld himself. Fucking Charles Gray's version of Blofeld. I don't know what the fuck they did to Blofeld in this movie, but Charles Gray does not have the smugness, the subtlety, the confidence or the remorselessness, if that's even a word, necessary to give Blofeld any form of justice whatsoever. He is not intimidating. He is not memorable. Well, he's memorable for all the wrong reasons, but he is not intimidating. He is not. He does not come off as a threat. He does not come off as really a villain that Bond should worry about. In all honesty, he comes off like a fucking like somebody's drunk grandpa ranting about whatever it is and having like these delusions of grandeur because he didn't get his medication. He hasn't balanced the medication out for whatever new pill he's taking. And that's not when the film decides to do stupid shit like have him clone himself or dress himself up in drag for some reason. Cause ha ha funny, I guess. What? There's absolutely nothing to them to Blofeld. This version of Blofeld at all. It's still not even the worst version of Blofeld. My God, that's the sad fucking thing. We'll get into that, trust me. But yeah, he is fucking abysmal. And speaking of fucking abysmal, would you say this is a controversial pick, Mr. Wink? Indeed, Mr. Phibb. I'm sure that the viewers will be very intolerable about it. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Wink? Most certainly, Mr. Phibb. First of all, any of you who know what I've just referenced, fucking gold star. You're awesome. But that's sad when what I'm referencing and what are ostensibly parodies of these two characters are better than the actual goddamn real deal of said characters. I know some people like these guys for some reason. I don't at all. Like, again, they're not very intimidating. Like, they're not intimidating in the slightest. I understand that they're trying to go for this sense of dissonant serenity, as it were, to where they're just kind of all blasé and checked out to what they do as hitmen on a daily basis, and I understand that general concept, but the way that these two come off, it doesn't seem like a bunch of emotionless guys who are completely blasé about their chosen profession. It comes off like two guys who just are reading from a script and they're stilted. I, I don't know if it's the performances or if it's the direction or the writing. Well, some of it's got to be the writing. Jesus Christ, the writing in Diamonds Are Forever is so fucking retarded. Or what? But they're not intimidating. This whole gimmick of them finishing each other's sentences combined with this really weird implication that these guys are in a homosexual relationship with each other. What? I don't even. It's not like I find it offensive. It's just, why would you even go that route to begin with? It's just, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And they're not necessarily a great physical threat throughout the film. They go out like two bitches, in all honesty. Like, one of them gets set the fuck on fire by goddamn flaming kebab, and the other one gets a bomb shoved up his ass and thrown off a boat. I ha comedy? Ugh. That's why I fucking hate Diamonds Are Forever so much. And that's why these two are at the bottom of the list. They're just so awful. Why would you have this entire scenario where you've got two gymnasts named after fucking characters from a Disney movie trying to kill Bond through the power of their thighs? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? They're completely perfunctory to the entire plot. The only impact they have is just a cringe-inducing scene that doesn't need to be there, but it's there because comedy, I suppose. Just, oh God. You were witnessing a man slowly have a part of his soul die before your very eyes, people. Oh, fucking Christ. Let me move on. Let me move on before I fucking give myself into despair from having to talk about Diamonds Are Forever anymore. Jesus Christ. Let's move on to Live and Let Die, the first Roger Moore film that would inflict the reign of Roger Moore on us for the worst. Um, I don't mind Live and Let Die. I do have my issues with it. I think some of the plot doesn't really work all that great. It has not aged the most gracefully, I would say. You can't get a bunch of stuffy old English white guys to pull off blaxploitation tropes well. You just can't. I'm sorry. Um, but other than that, I actually do think that it's still a very solid movie. It's honestly the villains are some of the best that Roger Moore has had throughout his tenure. And it's still an enjoyable romp. And speaking of villains, let's go to the main bad guy, uh, Dr. Kananga slash Mr. Big. Um, I'll be honest, I don't know why the filmmakers decided to do the whole Mr. Big angle. One, because the disguise is not really that effective, but most of all, the fact that this, very dignified gentleman and ambassador who's talking like this stereotypical early 70s extra from Superfly and dresses as such, why would you create that sort of dissonance to the character? That character and his death scene is fucking ludicrous. Absolutely fucking ludicrous. Chris, holy shit, that fucking stupid death scene. But other than that, I honestly think that Kananga is a very, very solid villain. In all honesty, he's got clear motivations. He's got dignity. He's got intimidation. He's got a great presence. The Effect Kodo does a fantastic job of making the first black Bond villain just as sophisticated and as intelligent and as menacing as any of the other Bond villains that came before him. He's honestly a really, really good villain. It's just the death scene and the Mr. Big disguise, I think, really do ruin his factors. But I'd still put him in the great category. If he just got disposed of better, he'd be in one tier above because he's really solid. Um, good old Baron Samedi. I do kind of understand why people don't like The Good Baron because if you're a fan of more grounded, gritty Bond films like I am, the idea of the legitimate Haitian Loa of death being an actual real thing basically says that, magic unequivocally exists in the Bond universe. And I know they play it ambiguously for the majority of it, but when you get to the ending when he's on the train and he's still alive, um, you know, that kind of basically says, yeah, magic exists. Huh? That makes no sense. Um, but I've never had a problem with it for the most part. Um, just because I do think that there is enough ambiguity in the film that a lot of that is played very subtly, but he himself is a great villain. He's again, he for the limited screen time that he has, he's got this great and memorable presence to him with with the makeup and how he dresses, the physical acting that Jeffrey Holder does, that fantastic laugh, evil laugh that and even the moments where you see him out of the makeup, you know, with with Kananga, especially when he's out and he greets Bond in solitaire with "Good morning, sir. Today is going to be a beautiful day." He's got this fantastic presence to him, and he's just a lot of fun. He's a fun villain to watch. For the limited amount of time that he is a legitimately fun villain. I don't give a shit if magic is implied in this universe or not. He's fucking fantastic. So I'd easily put him top tier. I mean, he's great. He's great, man. Um, what else? Next up is Teehee. Oh, good old Teehee. The only thing about it that I never understood is why give him the metal claw to begin with. Especially because the effects don't really hold up that well. I get why he's got the metal hook, or the metal claw, as it were, but I honestly don't think you needed it because, in all honesty, Teehee's honestly a solid henchman. The scene where he's talking to where he takes Bond to the alligator farm and he's like throwing pieces of chicken and telling Bond all these great facts about the differences between crocodiles and alligators, like a little kid who just read it in a science textbook. And the guy who plays him, I want to say his name was Julian Harris. He does a really great job of making this guy memorable. You didn't need to give him the metal claw, in my opinion, because he had this natural sense of charisma that made the character that much better than just the standard henchman with the physical defect. There was something legitimate. There's something legitimately likable about him as a villain, with how he interacts with Bond in certain scenarios, that he honestly makes a great sort of character in Kananga's, or a great asset, I should say, in Kananga's circle. He's a solid villain. Absolutely, absolutely solid. Um, Whisper. I honestly have nothing wrong with him too. I mean, despite the fact that he's a quiet guy and they portray him as a quiet guy, he's actually very memorable and how he is this sort of guy who you can sort of tell is playing stupid and um is trying to kind of let Bond's guard down, with him just being sort of this lackey butler slash servant archetype to him. But he actually does have a fairly good presence. He's not quite as good as the three villains that I mentioned before, who are all really fucking solid in their own rights, but he's still pretty good. Still pretty good dude. And then finally, um yeah, Rosie Carver. Well, not finally. Oh yeah, there's also the creepy snake dude from When They're Trying to Sacrifice Solitaire. I don't know why this guy's in there. He's got a cool design. He's a cool guy dressed in like weird looking fur stuff, and he's got a snake. You know, he doesn't have much dialogue, but goddamn does he have presence. And then finally, Rosie. I mean, again, she's just kind of, oh, the Bond girl who, was secretly working for the villains and, trying to let Bond's guard down, gets killed for her troubles and all that. It's an archetype. It's fine. You know, that sort of thing. Um, not the worst, but when you look at the roster of everything that I just mentioned, she really does kind of fall flat by comparison. Um, Next up, the man with the golden gun. Uh, oh god, man with the golden gun. My problem with the man with the golden gun is that I want this film to be better than it actually is. Because I love the story behind it. I love the idea kind of behind it if you really examine it. But it's just so fucking stupid. It is so fucking stupid. They're trying to make Roger Moore much more of a Sean Connery style Bond villain, and even though I've never liked, Uncle Roger's whole I'm going to be very suave and prim and proper and going to make all these wonderful puns in the world and raise my eyebrows slightly up to ensure that because that was the height of comedy right there style of Bond where it leads far more into traditional heroism, which I can't stand, especially for a character like Bond, who is unequivocally, unambiguously a very morally gray character. That's why we like him so much. Um, and I think this was the part where this is the movie where that really hurt him. But let's talk about the man of the hour, the titular man with the golden gun himself, Francisco Scaramanga, played by the ever so wonderful and very deeply missed thespian that is Christopher Lee. Even though I can't imitate to save my life. I love Scaramanga as a character. It's fucking Christopher Lee. He always did 110% of any performance he was going to do. He very much played Scaramanga off as the very suave, sophisticated hitman that he was. He had the intimidation factor, he had the smoothness to him, the charm to him, the respect of just wanting to kill James Bond on his own terms and at his own game. Like he is absolutely the best part of the movie. If it wasn't for him, I he is one of the best Bond villains. If it wasn't for his performance, I wouldn't watch it. Really the main problem I have with Scaramanga as a villain is the same problem I have with Man with the Golden Gun. It was made in the wrong fucking era. It was made during Roger Moore's goofy, campy, schlocky tenure as Bond. Because the idea behind the Man with the Golden Gun that I always found interesting is if you really dig beneath the surface, is that it's a story of two men who are basically two sides of the same coin. They're both basically guns for hire who kill people with very little qualms to their moral character and very little um, losing very little sleep or having the blood of on their hands or on their consciousness or whatever. It's just that one kind of does it for Queen and Golden Country and all that, and the other just does it for straight cash. If straight cash, there's a lot of ways you can do the execution of that story and have it come off really, really solid because you've got two men who are incredibly similar to each other. You've got two assassins, two hired guns who have distinctive weapons and modus operandi and all that who kill people as their job. It's just that one does it for money and one does it because Her Majesty the Queen wants me to do it, and I'm going to do it against all threats, foreign and domestic. You could easily draw the parallel between the similarities and the parallels between these two of well you two of well I do well you only do it for money, I do it for gold, queen, and country. But are you just deluding yourself into thinking that you do it for gold, queen, and country, or do you actually enjoy it to a certain degree? And you can play all these different parallels and really kind of get into the very gray, nitty gritty eras of who Bond is as a character. I know I'm going off on this tangent. I apologize. But the fact that it's in fucking Roger Moore's goofy, campy fucking era really kills it. That movie and Scaramanga as a character should have been made either when Sean Connery was really early into the role, like from Doctor No to um, Goldfinger era Sean Connery, or you had to have given it to someone like Timothy Dalton or Daniel Craig, someone who really can play with the very morally compromised, much grayer leaning in, heavy gray leaning into black sort of areas of who Bond actually is as a character and really play off the different parallels between each other. But you have Roger Moore. Oh, I'm so heroic. I'm so fascinated. Oh, I'm so righteous and good and do everything for the kids. Roger Moore. And it really falls flat because Christopher Lee fucking steamrolls Roger Moore's Bond. He just does straight up, and you lose all that fucking nuance that you really could have had by pitting these two characters against each other. But that's just me being me. That's what I personally want to see from the film, because when I look at it, I see so much more, something so much more interesting than what we got. And what we got is really fucking stupid and really fucking campy in some of the worst fucking degrees imaginable. My God. My God, is it painful to watch sometimes. But don't take grumpy old Pred and his opinions for it. You can easily watch film, come to your own conclusions. But that's just me. But I'm not going to take anything away from Christopher Lee's performance in that movie, because it's still a rock solid fucking performance and probably one of the best performances of his entire career. In all honesty, and considering the roles that Christopher Lee is known for, that's saying quite a bit. So there we go. Thanks for suffering through my rant. Now let's get to Nick Nack. I don't. Yes, he is a memorable character. Yes, I don't. Yes, Hervé Villechaize does a very good job with the performance that he's given. Yes, he is kind of memorable, but you seriously cannot expect me to have your henchman, your number two guy, be a fucking midget of all things. You know, especially during the climax of the film where Nick Nack tries to kill Bond because he killed Scaramanga. It's like Bond's facing off against a dwarf. How is that scary? You're expecting, like, what is, like, 6'4" Roger Moore to somehow get his ass kicked by fucking 3'5" Hervé Villechaize. And the fact that it's Hervé Villechaize in the first place. It's fucking Tattoo from Fantasy Island trying to kill Bond. I just keep expecting him at some point to just go, they play, and Ricardo Montalban to pop out of thin air and go, oh yes, Tattoo. Yes, yes, the plane is certainly arriving right here on the island of Francisco Scaramanga. I can't do Ricardo Montalban to save my life. I'm sorry. I can't. I keep trying to imitate people that I really can't fucking imitate. But that's what I keep expecting. Like, it's such a ridiculous notion of it, and I kind of understand the dynamic that they're going for. That you have that you have this very professional, well built, physical, heavy lifter like Scaramanga, and he's got a complete polar opposite in someone who has dwarfism and has this obvious handicap, who has to be a little bit more smarter, a little bit more clever, but it just doesn't work. It takes me out of it. It absolutely takes me out of it every time I see him on screen. So where is he? Where are you, Knick Knack? Where are you, you little bastard? There you are. Yeah, I just am I being a little bit harsh? Maybe. Do I care? Not really. Um, is that it for the villains from Man with the Golden Gun? I don't know. Who's this guy? Oh yeah, this guy. I think he was in Doctor No. He was the cab driver who was driving Bond somewhere and that killed himself with a cyanide pill. I mean, should kind of tell you everything that I need to know about him. No presence throughout the movie whatsoever. None whatsoever. Yeah, forgive me for kind of jumping in between stuff, but like this is a like if it was just like the henchmen and the other and like the main villains, that'd be one thing. But the fact that you have this guy's like one-off characters and stuff like that, man. Speaking of, oh yeah, he was in Man with the Golden Gun. Don't remember a damn thing about him. All I just knew is that he had the cool mustache. That was about it. I don't even think he said a line of dialogue. I don't even know what the fuck his name was. Just kind of there, actually. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Got a lot of phlegm. That's always fun. Um, Next up is The Spy Who Loved Me. Without a doubt, Roger Moore's best Bond film by far. And it's easily my favorite Bond film of his, even though, again, not a lot of it seems as daring as it or as original as it once was. A lot of stuff's been lampooned and everything, but it still honestly holds up. Um, let's talk about who to start off with. Stromberg. Um, yeah, I never liked Stromberg as a villain. He has the same problem that Largo does from Thunderball. He's just not that fucking memorable as a villain. Like that's really the one gripe I have with The Spy Who Loved Me as a film is that Stromberg is not a memorable villain at all. You know, the guy who plays him, he does a fine job, but you know, I don't remember anything about his motivations. I think he wanted to create like some underwater paradise or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember anything about his personality. I don't remember any lines he spoke. I don't remember fucking. I think the only thing I remember is that he got shot in the crotch with a harpoon gun. That's how he died. That's the only thing I remember. Everything else about him, I couldn't tell you. And considering how there are so many memorable, great moments of The Spy Who Loved Me, the fact that the main villain drops the ball that hard is honestly just pathetic. So, but he does. But there is one redeeming villain in it, and that is our boy, good old Jaws. Do I really need to explain anything about Jaws again? He's been parodied and lampooned and referenced to death. But it's hard not to see why. He's got a great physical presence. Richard Kiel does a fantastic job with his physical acting, even though he doesn't speak. You know, the metal teeth, he definitely makes use of it. He's scary, he's big, he's intimidating. He's a great villain in The Spy Who Loved Me. The problem is they brought him back for Moonraker and made a fucking joke out of him. I don't know why you would decide to defang, haha, Jaws in Moonraker and like turn him into this stupid pastiche of pastiche of like Wile E. Coyote where he falls victim to slapstick and pratfalls and falls in love with a girl and becomes a good guy. Oh, Jesus H. Christ, man. We'll get to Moonraker in a bit, but I fucking hate that film for that. Um, and it's really a shame that that's the case because if it wasn't for Moonraker, I honestly would put him like in great. Honestly, would put him in like the top highest toppest tier because he is that fucking good in The Spy Who Loved Me as a henchman, as a baddie that he deserves it. But fucking Moonraker, man, they decided to just turn him into a joke, so unfortunately he's got to be in the great tier. Sorry, everyone. I know he's supposed to be in a tier up higher, but fucking blame Moonraker for ruining his goddamn character. The only reason why he's not in pretty good for how badly butchered he was in Moonraker was just because he was so great in The Spy Who Loved Me. Um, who else? Oh yeah, she was in this. Naomi was it? Hot chick who was again another hot chick who's trying to seduce Bond. She wasn't the helicopter. Did she pilot the helicopter? No, she was in the helicopter in the memorable chase scene with the Lotus Esprit. So I guess that kind of counts to a certain extent. Maybe. I mean, she is pretty hot, so yeah, maybe pretty good. She's hot. Yes, my wonderful chauvinism will never die. Anyone else? Apparently, this guy, Sander, is his name. Big dude. Oh yeah, this guy was part of the chase scene, and he ended up getting knocked off the roof by 007 and in Cairo. He's all right. It was a good action sequence, but you know, other than that, couldn't tell you anything about the dude. Moonraker. Quick history, quick summary of Moonraker. I despise it. I think Bond going into space is a step too far, in my opinion. Obvious that it was trying to be. It was obvious that the producers were doing it because, hey, Star Wars was out and we need to do science fiction. Or as Broccoli Cubby infamously said, science back. Blow it out your ass, dude. Um, but it's so fucking stupid. I mean, besides the fact that the plot is basically a shot for shot remake of The Spy Who Loved Me, it is just filled with so much stupid shit in it. The gondola chase, all the shit with Jaws, the pigeon reaction shot. God damn. Jesus Christ. Well, let's talk about the villains. First off is Hugo Drax. Whose plot makes absolutely no fucking sense when you think about it. I mean, get a bunch of genetically superior people into like this ark, as it were, like in biblical times, and have them all made to create a perfect race with each other that's not going to last for only going to last for a couple of generations before it collapses in on itself. I don't fucking know how you would do it. It doesn't seem plausible. But the surprising thing about it is that he's actually a genuinely intimidating threat. Like Michael Lonsdale, the guy who plays him, he has a very nice, subtle menace to him. He's very soft spoken. He is shallowly, very affably shallow, as it were. That's better. Um, in his delivery. Like he's actually a really, really solid villain, but he's completely at odds with the goofy late 70s sci-fi campy tone that the film is trying to go for. It's like you took, how do I even describe it? It's like, how do I describe it anyway? It's like taking a villain from Cyberpunk, like a corpo head from Cyberpunk, and putting him in the world of Buck Rogers, let's say, or like Lost in Space, or something like that. Where you've got this very serious, legitimate threat played against a very goofy, cartoonish pastiche of science fiction. He just doesn't. There's a tonal dissonance to him that is really fucking jarring when you think about it. But I'm still gonna say he's a fantastic villain. He's just in the wrong goddamn movie. Next up is Chang, or as I like to call him, Kato. I don't really know about this guy. I mean, again, there's only two. He's really is only there in two scenes. The weird Chinese servant with the bowl cut on his head, real intimidating, and the pencil thin mustache, real intimidating there, bud. Great sense. But there's only two scenes. One is the scene where Bond is in the zero G machine and he just slowly turns it up to try and kill Bond that way, which actually is, I will say, legitimately tense scene. The only problem is that it keeps cutting back to him and he's just kind of grinning like an idiot, like him with the bowl cut, and everything, and him grinning like that. It looks like a 16-year-old guy, like a 16-year-old nerdy loner who looks like he's about to see a titty pop out for the first time. It's like, and then the other scene is where he's in the kendo outfit and he's smashing shit fucking everywhere in this museum while Bond keeps dodging it. And I look at both of those scenes and it's like, how am I supposed to take this guy seriously as like a henchman or something? He comes off so fucking stupid. He's such a pastiche. Again, he's such this farcical pastiche that how am I supposed to be intimidated by him? I guess it works with the tone of the film, but the tone of the film's fucking ridiculous to begin with. And not in the enjoyable kind of ridiculous, just in the kind of ridiculous it's fucking stupid. So I don't. Yeah, I have to put him at the bottom, man. I can't see anything redeemable about this guy whatsoever. What else? Anything else? Anything else at all? No? Okay. All right. Let's stop talking about Moonraker. Let's move on to the spot to not The Spy Who Loved Me, For Your Eyes Only. Um let's start off with the main villain of the hour, Kristatos. Yeah. It's a shame too because I like the idea. Uh, First off, opinions on For Your Eyes Only in brief. I do think it's better than a lot of other Roger Moore's films. I still don't think it's that good. I do appreciate the fact they go for a more sober tone, but there's still a little bit too much campy, goofy bullshit in there for my liking. Like the fucking hockey scene or the Olympics chase that goes on for way too long, or the encounter with the dude in the diving suit underwater with that really awkward kind of motive for it. And it's and the cameo from Blofeld at the beginning. I don't know why you needed to do that or do that. And the sort of hypocritical idea of okay, kill Blofeld off, but then it becomes Bond trying to lecture what's her name to not seek revenge against Kristatos for him killing her family or something like that. I don't fucking know, man. Roger Moore can't pull it off, but whatever. Kristatos himself, it's such a shame. Like, I know they're trying to do the whole thing of playing two sides against each other. Who's really the good guy? Who's really the bad guy? The good guy who thought Zorro was really the bad guy, double crossing us, and all this trope. But he's just not a very memorable villain at all. I don't remember his scheme. He's not a he doesn't have any real memorable lines. He's not very threatening. He's not very intimidating. And it's such a shame, too, because he's played by such a great actor. You know, Julian Glover has been in countless fucking properties. I mean, he was in Game of Thrones. He was one of the commanders on the Battle of Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back, the guy in the AT-AT who destroyed the shield generator. He was Donovan in The Last Crusade. He was the giant spider from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. This guy's a solid actor with a lot of great villain roles and credentials to his name, but I don't know if it was the writing or if it was the direction that he got. He brings nothing to who Christados is as a villain whatsoever. He is not memorable under any circumstances at all. He's practically a non-entity in the entire film. And for a film whose entire plot relies on misdirection and trying to double cross one another and playing against this other guy, I forget the other guy's name, who was played by, I think his name was Topple. Fantastic dude, a lot of very charismatic guy, a lot of memorability to him. But you needed to have this strong, someone with a strong personality or strong sense of will to go against the other guy. And I kind of understand the opposing dynamic of trying to play off opposing dynamics between the two. Where you have one really loud, bombastic, boisterous kind of guy, and one who works very subtly, quiet, and shadows and whatever. But Chrysalis is just such a fucking non-entity in that entire movie. He really is. It really is, and it sucks because he fucking deserved better than that. Honestly. So he's in the bottom for me personally. Next up, oh, Krieger. Oh, good, another Red Grant clone. I'm putting this guy in the bottom because he was responsible for that stupid luge skiing resort chase scene that went on for so goddamn long. And all he just kind of does is look constipated and not say a whole lot. Fuck him. Not great villains in the Spy Who not the Spy Who Loved Me. And For Your Eyes Only, I should say. Um Apparently there's another guy in here as well. This guy I do remember from the film. Again, complete non-entity besides his look. He's the guy that Bond chases around the pool and then he gets harpooned in the back and falls in the pool dead with blood fills in the water, whatever. Um and this guy, he's only going up another notch because he does have some memorability just in his look, even though I don't remember anything about him in his actions or his lines throughout the film. And he does have the memorable death scene where Bond kicks his Mercedes Benz off the ledge and it goes rolling down the cliff and all that. All that. That's really the only thing that saves him. Otherwise, yeah, not really. Not really. Not really at all. Um, that's about all I can say, really. Next up is Octopussy. Everyone has their one Roger Moore film that they can't stand. For some, it's Moonraker. For some, it's View to a Kill. For some, it's Man with the Golden Gun. For me, it's Octopussy. I can't fucking stand Octopussy to save my fucking soul. And it's not just the clown scene that gets me, it's everything else around it. Around it, from how the villains are portrayed to the complete tonal whiplash it does to the story not really being that interesting. The clown scene is really the cherry on top of the shit sundae, but everything else about Octopussy, I can't. To me, that is the absolute nadir of Roger Moore's tenure as Bond. And I know there are some people who like it both ironically and unironically, and some who'll state that oh, it's an underrated masterpiece and people aren't giving it a chance because of one scene. No, I gave it a chance, motherfucker. I gave it a chance twice and I hated it both times. I'm sorry, but let us let us not dwell on that. Let us dwell on the villains who both I guess we'll start with Kamal Khan first, wherever the hell he is. Again, I understand that they're trying to make him a more subtle villain, but he's got the same problem as. Actually, no, I'll put him in a tier down. He's got the same problem that. Actually, you know what? No, let me organize this again because Julian Glover does try with Christados, even if Christados doesn't succeed. You can't really say anything that bad about his performance. The guy who plays Kamal Khan, again, he's trying his best as well, but fuck me if I can remember anything about Kamal Khan. Like, it's almost the case of he's too subtle, where he's so underplays everything throughout the entire film that he comes off very much like an absolute nonentity. And unlike Julian Glover, who at least could give Cruzado some form of of not memorability necessary, presence through his performance. The guy who plays Kamal Khan can't. He just can't. You know, he almost doesn't exist for half the fucking movie, in my opinion. I don't remember anything about him. But I do remember his other guy. Where is it? Where is that overacting, scenery chewing dickhead? Where is he? No. Come on, Orlov, you fucking bastard. Where are you? God damn. Again, I don't know how this. There's Orlov. There we go. Oh, god damn, do I hate Orlov so much. I don't know what the fuck they were trying to get out with this guy. The stereotypical angry Russian general who yells everything at the top of his lungs, and Steven Burkhoff, with his eyes bugging out of his head all the time, and him yelling everything at the top of his lungs, and that horribly exaggerated Russian accent. Like, I love over the top hammy acting in people who do villain roles. I love it when guys just go full on scenery chewing, fucking batshit insane when they play bad guys. It's done right. It is done right. Hell, even done wrong. It is such a treat to watch that I can't help but love it. This guy, on the other hand, fucking Burkoff's portrayal as General Orlov, I don't know what he was doing with how he was coming off, but it it, it's almost so over the top that it wraps around to being stupid, but it's not stupid enough for it to round out to then circle back around to being enjoyable. Like, it's fucking painful to watch sometimes. Him just yelling at the top of his lungs, giving the evil eye wherever he can, like he's trying to push a turd out in his angry moments, the bad Russian accent. Jesus Christ. Same goes for this guy. I don't know who the hell this guy is. But again, okay, big silent brute who doesn't say anything, that's fine. But again, this guy doesn't really have a memorable presence. He's just a guy dressed up as the most stereotypical Indian brute that you can think of. Just, again, looking like somebody fucking pissing his cornflakes in the morning. Constantly just with that mean scowl and bugging his eyes out like he's trying to get him to pop out of a skull or something. It's, again, it's ludicrous. And then we have these two guys, the knife throwing twins. Their performances are stilted and awkward. They're not intimidating in the slightest. They're just, and I get that they're circus performers. That's kind of the point. That's why they are the way they are. But Jesus, that kind of says everything. I honestly think that Octopussy has, without a doubt, the absolute worst villain roster in the entire fucking franchise. No, scratch that. I think it's tied with maybe one or two other films that have the absolute worst villain roster in the entire franchise. Nothing about the villains in Octopussy are in any way, shape, or form good. They're just, ugh, hate 'em bad. They're awful. Absolutely awful. But finally, we're going to be done with Roger Moore soon. With the view to a kill. Um, Controversial opinion, View to a Kill is probably one of my favorite Roger Moore Bond films. Like, I totally understand why people hate it. I can totally get the criticisms that they have for it. I do too, to a certain extent, but God damn it, it is my absolute guilty pleasure when it comes to it. I mean, it for me, it's so stupid and campy just in the 80s-ness of it. And there is some legitimately good scenes and aspects of it that compared to all the other campy over the top Roger Moore Bond films, this is the one that I get behind when I just want my fucking cheesy ass Bond. The Bond is that. And of course, one of those aspects is the main villain, Max Zorin, played by the one, the only, the interminable, the absolutely magnificent, and yet strange Christopher Walken in a role that he was born to play to a staggering degree. I I love Christopher Walken. He is Christopher Walken to me is like the American version of Tim Curry. He is so odd and so distinct in his presence and how he approaches roles that even in a fucking terrible project, he always is the highlight of it. He is just because he's just doing his own weird fucking thing. I don't even know if Walken knows. I don't even know if Walken reads like half the scripts he's been in. I think he just kind of does his own thing. It's like it's like Chris, we're trying to do this. Do this. What do you mean? No, the script says this. What script? You mean you didn't give a script? No. Christopher Walken. I don't need a script. But him as Zorin is just absolutely fantastic because okay, Zorin's motivation is basically just fucking Goldfinger with in the computer age, but it's obvious that, being the 80s, when computers were new and nobody knew shit about what they actually were. But just his awkward presence alone, just him being him and doing all the Christopher Walken things and the more power, and and you know, and I hope you find the watery grave, Mr. Bond, and but that would mean I'm dead. Bang. He's such a great presence in that movie that I think he works with the campy tone exponentially, but when you just get out of him being him and him being Walken, he actually does manage to be a scarily effective villain in some ways. Like the aforementioned, Treasury, but that would make me dead. Bang scene, I think is actually a really great bit of acting where he just kind of leads the poor bastard on and on and on before finally pulling the trigger. And especially the scene in the mines where he just says fuck it, grabs the Uzi, and just starts mowing everybody down. Walken plays it with such this sadistic sense of sociopathic childlike glee at what he's doing that it comes off as absolutely terrifying. It really does kind of show the depravity of just how fucked up this guy is in the head that it actually does manage to create a very effective villain moment for himself. I would imagine himself. It really does. it shows that beneath all the weird Walken shit, that when Walken wants to be terrifying, he can legitimately be fucking terrifying and act his ass off when he needs to. And that I think that was like a perfect role. I mean, and I think and I know that kind of the idea of there being a younger, fitter villain compared to Moore's old, aged, advanced Bond, which I think would have worked better if they actually kind of acknowledged it instead of just pretending that Moore was always kind of fit and young and virile and spry like they try to in the movie. You know, that great contrast between the two, I think, works really well. I mean, Zoran's a fantastic fucking villain. I mean, even even if you totally hate View to a Kill, which I totally understand the people who do. For me, he's one of those factors of why I like watching it. Because one, it's just Christopher Walken. Any movie that has Christopher Walken in it cannot automatically be the worst thing in the world to me just because it's Christopher Walken doing his Christopher Walken thing. But also just because he's a legitimately good villain, in all honesty. So that's why I put him, in the top tier. He's great. And honestly, you know what? There's she. There's Mayday. She's great too. I mean, I never like you gotta understand. My only exposure to Grace Jones was all the in living color sketches that made fun of her. For which, if you haven't watched those sketches, go to YouTube and watch them. They're fucking hysterical. But I never heard of her singing. I never seen her in any of her acting roles. I know this is like the role that she's most well known for is fucking Mayday. And honestly, she's really, really great at it. Like, she's got this great physical presence to her. She has all the right acting bits in terms of her body language and her facial expressions and how she carries herself. She is a legitimately convincing badass. And it's not just because it's Grace Jones and she had that very androgynous appearance going on at the height of her career. No, she's a legit she could get rid of the buzz cut and look more feminine, and she'd still have the energy necessary to pull off Mayday as a character and still be fucking terrifying as hell. You know, she is a um great henchwoman. Not just in this film, just in any Bond film in general. I mean, even with A View to a Kill being as reviled as it is, everyone remembers fucking Mayday, and for good reason. That bitch is terrifying. Her sleeping with 53-year-old Roger Moore, though, 57-year-old Roger Moore, though, yeah, get the bleach, please, and pour it into my eyes ASAP. But, I got nothing. That's one minor nitpick, and that's just the filmmakers being the filmmakers and not retiring more sooner than he fucking needed to. Or retiring him sooner than he should have, I should say. Whatever. You get the point I'm trying to convey here, but got nothing bad to say about Mayday. She's great. Her and Zoran are awesome in this movie. That's why I love it so much. Oh yeah, this guy, Zoran's inventor. You know, former Nazi scientist created Zoran as a test tube baby to create like the Ubermensch. Really, the only thing I remember is him going Max after Zoran falls out the Golden Gate Bridge at the climax and blowing his dumbass up with dynamite. Other than that, though, nothing really memorable about him other than, oh, look at that wacky Nazi guy. Do 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 do. Scarpine. Who the fuck is Scarpine? I'll just put him right here. I don't remember this guy. Fuck it. I'll just put him wherever. Um. But that is finally the end of Roger Moore's era as Bond. Now we move on to Timothy Dalton, who is my absolute favorite Bond, and we start off with The Living Daylights. I love the Living Daylights a lot. I honestly think you should. I honestly think living if you watch Living Daylights and From Russia with Love as kind of like this Cold War era double feature, you get like a really solid viewing experience. I mean, I do think it is. It does have kind of the trappings of traditional Bond in it that kind of hurt some of it a little bit. I still think they were trying to like adjust it to bring more to Timothy Dalton's level of grounded, gritty, realistic seriousness, as it were, as opposed to kind of like the goofier stuff. And you can kind of see remnants of that in the film, but otherwise, it's a great experience. Great experience to watch. First off is Koskov. Although I will admit the villains in The Living Daylights aren't memorable. I mean, Koskov is fine, I guess. Um, again, the whole thing of him secretly being a double agent, I think the guy who does play Koskov pulls off the face heel turn to a degree, and he is such an unbearably smug douche. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily classify him as intimidating, really. He doesn't do anything especially villainous apart from just being the pawn in a larger scheme, trying to destabilize the West or something. I don't know. The guy who plays him is fine. I just don't think he's that memorable of a villain. So I'd put him in average. Fucking Brad Whitaker. Oh God, Jodan Baker. Y'all forgot that Jodan Baker was in a film before the Brosnan era, did you? I did too. Um, he's such a pathetic dunce, though. I mean, Jodan Baker does a good job of playing this guy. I do kind of like this idea of him not really being a legitimate bad guy. He's kind of the stolen valor goofball who fancies himself and portends himself to be a much smarter, more savvy, more tactical badass than he actually is. Um, but I think they almost do it a little too well, where this guy is such a fucking goofy ass little fat bastard that he's not exactly that intimidating as a villain. I like the idea of him playing off with you know, this idea of he's high on his own supply, he gets high on his own farts and believes his own hype a lot more. But when you've got this guy like have various wax statues of him dressed up as like Napoleon or Julius Caesar and all these other great military minds. Like, okay, you're taking it a step too far. You're starting to get a little bit too goofy, and now this guy went from being an intentional joke to complete fucking like non-threat in the entire movie. I mean, other than the final shootout where he's got like that where he's basically just has like the rifle shield. Like he's just doing Blackbeard for Rainbow Six Siege before Blackbeard was even a thing. You know, other than that, he's not really that big of a threat at all. I mean, he's entertaining, but he's kind of entertaining for all the wrong reasons, I think. But there's still enough comedy value to where I do get quite some enjoyment out of him. And then the last guy, Necros. Out of all the Red Grant clones to have existed in James Bond lore, as it were, Necros is probably the absolute best because the guy who plays him is a legitimately terrifying dude. He's, you know, he does have everything. The big kind of blonde, brutish badass who just doesn't say a whole lot. But the fact that he's got him mimicking voices perfectly. It's a little bit kind of it is teetering on the line, but he's like an actual legitimate threat. He's the only real legitimate threat in the entire film. Great physical performance from the guy who plays him. Great gimmick. I love the fact that they gave him like his own leitmotif, and it's the Carpenters of all things. Just him being goofy and like contrasting that kind of really cheery, upbeat sort of music with this guy while he's just fucking going about his business, whacking people. That's such a great. I love soundtrack dissonance like that. It's one of my favorite tropes in anything. He's honestly a really solid henchman. I'd actually put him. Yeah, I'd honestly put Necros in great. He is that fucking good. He's like the only again, he's the only Red Grant clone that works because he actually has his own thing besides being a Red Grant clone, and he's really fucking good at it. So yeah, Necros rocks. Um, next up, we have License to Kill. I love License to Kill to death. This is easily one of my top five favorite Bond films of all time. Easily the best Bond film that Timothy Dalton has ever done. Out of his two, I really did wish we got a third Timothy Dalton Bond. I really fucking do because Dalton still is my favorite Bond of all time. Um, I love it. It's not for everybody. I can understand why it still has why it still has a divisive reputation today, but I can't get enough of it. I think it's incredibly underrated as a Bond film at all, and at all, just in general. That it's a great Bond film. And let's start off with the one of the main reasons why it's great is the villain, Franz Sanchez. Um, Sanchez really did make me a fan of Robert Davi as an actor. Because beforehand he was kind of a non-entity to me, but now that I've seen him, I realized that I was kind of sleeping on the dude. He's a fantastic actor. He is okay. He's basically Pablo Escobar in Bond universe, but he is such a intimidating, remorseless, cold, just evil motherfucker. He fucker. He is very smooth. He is very intimidating. He's an evil guy. He gives me chills whenever he's on screen, And the relationship that he has with Bond with this sort of, Bond actually being like an espionage guy and trying to gain his trust and, the respect and the cat and mouse game that they kind of play with each other where they're trying to push each other's buttons and everything like that. It's great. I mean, he fits in. He is a great adversary to Dalton's take on Bond. He matches Dalton as a battle of equals. It's like one of the only Bond villains I've seen that's like a true battle of equals. Because in other Bond movies, it's more like, either Bond is the superior guy in terms of the physicality, but not necessarily in terms of being smart, or Bond's outmatched physically or what have you. No, it really is like just two men playing a game of chess with each other, trying to figure out who's going to slip up more and trying to cover up their moves, keep themselves safe and all that. It is fascinating stuff to watch, and Sanchez is such an underrated villain in my opinion. Like when people talk about great Bond villains, he never seems to come up. Not never, but very rarely seems to come up. And I don't know if that's just because of the divisive reputation of License to Kill. I think that's part of it, or if he gets outshadowed by other people. But to me, Sanchez is one of the best Bond villains ever. Like ever. Watch License to Kill if you haven't in a while, or if you've never seen it at all. He is a great movie, and he's what makes it. Next up is his henchman Dario, played by a very very young Benicio del Toro. Um, and the dude fucking kills it. I mean, watching him, it proves that Benicio del Toro was always a scary motherfucker, even when he was 21. I mean, and if you don't believe Benicio del Toro could be a scary motherfucker, again, either watch License to Kill or fucking watch him in Sicario. You're going to be seeing great movies either way, but seriously, just. But no, Dario's a great henchman. Again, Del Toro was always great with the Kubrick stares and the death glares and his physical acting, and he's got some great intimidating lines. Don't worry, we gave her a nice honeymoon. And when you think of the implications of that, he was always a slimy little bastard. He's great too, honestly. Another great underrated Bond henchman, and his death is something else, man. um, Next up, Milton. He's good. He's a pretty solid villain. I do like the idea that he kind of tells Sanchez what to do at like the last thing. He actually does have a memorable presence to him. He's got a great fucking death though, horrifying death. Jesus. Yeah, he's pretty solid. Um, Next up, oh yeah, this guy. That's the guy who betrayed Leiter to Sanchez. Had some remorse to it, and then the interrogation scene where Bond and Sharky are trying to uh kind of grill him for stuff, and then Bond throws the briefcase full of money that Ed was given by Sanchez, and he falls off the chain and gets eaten by the shark. Ooh, that's another great scene. I know I'm spoiling everything about fucking License to Kill. Seriously, go watch it. It's a great film. He's actually pretty good, also, despite being in the movie for like 10 minutes. Um, and then where is Joe Butcher? There he is. I'll be honest, he's like the one guy I don't understand why that is. Like a preacher man devoted to a cause, but why would a drug ring have a preacher man dressed like a televangelist? I don't know. Wayne Newton does a fine job, but Wayne Newton's never been like the greatest actor that there was or is or what have you. He's kind of like this non-presence actually. And I just don't and it wouldn't be so bad if he didn't seem so jarringly out of place in the movie, which he is. It's astounding actually. Absolutely astounding. Um so now we're out of the Dalton era, and let's move on to Brosnan. And Brosnan's actually kind of the Bond that I kind of associate with Bond from a physicality standpoint. Not necessarily not a not a performance standpoint. I don't think Brosnan did bad as Bond, but in my mind's eye, if you tell me what does Bond look like, or give me a physical descriptor of how Bond looks like or how he appears, Brosnan's the person that I always go to. GoldenEye, easily my favorite film of his. I really do think that film has held up actually very well, in all honesty. Again, top 5 favorite films for me. I think GoldenEye is fucking fantastic. Um, really solid. And let's start with main man of the hour, good old Alec Trevelyan himself. For England, James. Um, I really have nothing bad to say about Trevelyan at all. I think he's a fantastic villain. I really appreciate the fact that the motivations behind his scheme kind of plays into the sort of deconstructionist aspects of the film where, throughout the film, they kind of go a little bit in deconstructing Bond and what his role in espionage really is in terms of the Cold War, and is he still viable? Is he just a relic that should be left in the past? And I do like the fact that Trevelyan's motivations kind of play into that, where he's trying to avenge his parents because he was a Cossack and the Brits mistreated the Cossacks and he wants to get revenge, but it seems like, well, what are you really doing, dude? You're just kind of perpetuating this old grudge that you really should let a sleeping dog lie. I know it affected you personally, but it's really worth destabilizing an entire country for something that not many people know. And I do like the fact that he very much does poke at Bond and kind of deconstructs it. Like one of the things that I've always loved about GoldenEye, my favorite moment in GoldenEye isn't like the tank chase or like the opening scene or anything like that. My favorite moment in GoldenEye is when Trevelyan says, "I wonder how." Basically, says to Bond, "I wonder how many vodka martinis you've drowned to stop the screams of silence of all the men you've killed, or how many women you've bed in order to forget about the ones you couldn't save." And I really appreciate him tearing Bond down like that. And I think if you go with the theory that Bond kind of portrays, there's a through line through Bond, and if you look at Brosnan's films as like a trilogy of Bond films, you can or what? No, not trilogy, quadrology, I should say. If you look at Brosnan's four films as a quadrology that are all interconnected together, and you watch those films, you can kind of hear those same words that Trevelyan sort of speaks to Bond in his lower moments, in his moments of panic, especially with regards to women. It's actually really genius. It's such a haunting thing, and I love the fact that Trevelyan's very much portrayed as an anti-Bond, where you can definitely see the two of them, how the two of them would work together as agents, how he kind of seems like Bond's darker counterpart who, serves Her Majesty's secret government and everything. And as strong as the writing is, I honestly think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that Sean Bean's performance is fucking fantastic in the role. I know everyone just looks at Bean as the guy who always dies in everything that he's in, but his performance as Trevelyan really, really knocks it out of the park. He is such a great villain who hits all the emotions necessary that Trevelyan needs. And it also helps that Sean Bean could also be a great James Bond, you know, as well. Like, if Brosnan wasn't in the role and Sean Bean had to kind of like step in, then Sean Bean could pull off Bond really, really rather well for himself. So it kind of, again, feeds into this dynamic that GoldenEye plays around with of Trevelyan kind of being Bond's darker, more sinister sort of counterpart. It's such this great play between these two characters. He's such a it's so fascinating to kind of like analyze Trevelyan as a villain because there is honestly a lot of complexity that can be picked apart and pulled apart. And I know that's not something you normally say with regards to Bond films, but he honestly is one of the few that manages to pull it off. He's fucking phenomenal. I think Trevelyan to me is like in the top three best Bond villains ever, in my opinion. He is such a fascinating character. Oh boy. Oh, I'm gonna get crucified for this, aren't I? Kill me. um, Here's my main problem with Zenyatta on the top, if I may. I think Famke Janssen does a great job portraying her. I do kind of like the idea that she is a sadomasochistic um, combatant and that she derives sexual sadomasochistic pleasure from killing people in her own weird way, like her squeezing people in between her thighs and shit like that. And I do like that concept because it's a great interplay between, um, sex and violence that Bond has always kind of skirted around with, but never really kind of gone to this degree. The problem is, I don't know if it's the writing, if it's her performance, if it's the direction she's got, or what, but but a lot of her performance is so over the top and how turned on she gets with it that it almost becomes self parody. like her squeezing people when in between her murderous thighs when they're having sex, or like the creepy double entendres that she gives to Bond sometimes, like saying the pleasure will be is all mine when she's about to kill him. That stuff like that works, but when she's literally like orgasming and getting really turned on when she's like gunning down rooms of civilians, and it really is kind of going through this every single turn, it almost veers into it being really, really fucking stupid in its execution and really goofy in all honesty. Like I understand completely what they were going for, and I think with the right direction necessary, seeing someone get that fucking turned on when they're just killing people left and right could be really, really terrifying. But I think they were leaning way more towards the fan service angle of it rather than really playing around with, okay, how can we actually make this come off as creepy as it could be? Which, fair enough, when you're dealing with Famke Janssen from 1995, I don't blame you for playing the fan service angle. But at the same time, it borders into self parody sometimes. That's my main issue. She has moments of great brilliance and everything. I just think that sometimes the filmmakers get a little bit too stupid with it. That's all I can say. Like honestly, compared to some of the other villains on the barely bearable list, she's not the absolute worst. But I don't think she's that great of a villain. Sorry. Oh, I'm gonna get crucified for that. Next up is what is Boris? Ah, there is Boris. I fucking love Boris. Boris is such an ineffectual, obnoxious little toady chode of a villain that I honestly can't hate him at all. Alan Cumming it fucking knocks it out of the park with his exaggerated Russian accent and the goofy mannerisms that he does and how smug he is, which it's Alan Cumming playing a weird role. I honestly don't think Alan Cumming has ever played a normal fucking role in his life. You ever notice that? Like between Boris, fucking Nightcrawler and X2, um, what other film roles that he's been in? Like even his shitty film roles, he always has to play like the weird, exaggerated, put upon person. If he can't like have a goofy accent or get done up in makeup or have like something that really defines him, I just don't think he wants to do it. He's kind of like the Scottish version of John Leguizamo. He always just goes for the roles that just let him be as fucking weird as he wants to be. You know what I mean? Not that I'm complaining. He does great in these roles. But I also bring that up because there's one moment when Boris is like when they're hacking into everything and Boris is trying to get everything done. And then, he gets up from his chair and yells into Talia, "Give me the codes, Natalia! Give them to me!" And it's that one moment where I just get taken aback by it because I'm like, well, okay, he actually can be fucking terrifying when he needs to be. And like that moment of him losing his cool and seeing all the smug superiority drain away from him and turn into the screaming, raging little maniac who's at like the very edge of his sanity. That's like, whoa, dude, you're actually fucking scary when you need to be. Didn't expect that from Alan Cumming, but bravo. Um, I love Boris. He's such a great and honestly, he's like one of those rare villains where he's intentionally meant to be a pathetic, goofy kind of little shit of a villain who actually manages to be funny. Not a lot of villains are able to pull that off. They just end up either grading way too fucking obnoxiously or they're insufferable to sit through with how they are. But he's actually one of the few that manages to be legitimately funny and still manage to be charming enough, not necessarily likable enough, to where I can watch him all day. So there we go. And then finally, General Orlov. Eh, I don't hate Orlov. Again, he's got some funny moments. Just him giving directions while he's being chased by a tank and taking swigs from his flask. I enjoy that, but is he really that intimidating? No. Is he really that great? No, he's got a good presence to him, but I don't. But I think compared to how memorable the other villains are, for better or for worse, he's still memorable. But he kind of is on the. Many people will put him on the bottom half of the totem pole because more people love Zenny. I get why. I just have my own personal reservations and hangups, but he's still not a bad villain at all, especially not compared to the lot below him. So yeah. Next up, Tomorrow Never Dies. I actually really like Tomorrow Never Dies. Like, Tomorrow Never Dies for me is like what I call a sick day film where if I'm if I just want a Bond film where I don't want to think about anything, I feel out of it, I don't want to do anything else, I will literally just put it on, turn my brain off and just enjoy the spectacle. Like that's not to say that I think Tomorrow Never Dies is just some dumb late '90s action film that's all cattle and that's all hat no cowboy, as it were, because it's not. Um, I actually think a lot of the social commentary that Tomorrow Never Dies was trying to do was honestly a hell of a lot ahead of its time, more so than people realize. Like that, like if you watch Tomorrow Never Dies in 2023, it hits a lot harder with its satire than it did back in 1997. What seemed stupid back then is like, oh shit, this is just the new normal now. you know? Um, and let's start with Elliot Carver. Uh, Honestly, I do think Carver is one of those villains who's kind of been redeemed by hindsight because, the idea of Bond fighting this evil news mogul, it is stupid. Let's be fair here. It's a bit of a ridiculous stretch. Now with the whole kerfuffle of all the legacy media and all the news stations and lead and the lead and the if it bleeds where it leads attitude hitting its full disgusting apex in some certain situations and people intentionally stoking the coals and creating incidents in order to create better news ratings and better resources. Back in 1997, I'm sure people were like, this is so fucking stupid. And now in 2023, it's like, holy shit, this movie was ahead of its time. But I totally get if people have reservations on it because he's not a mental genius above Bond. He's not a physical specimen above Bond. He doesn't really have anything that makes him better than Bond. He's just like a raging egomaniac trying to get rich. You know, again, I think the benefit of hindsight does make him a bit stronger, but at the same time, evil news mogul, on the surface of it, it is really fucking stupid. At the same time, though, separating the social satire aspect of it, I honestly still like Carver a lot because Jonathan Pryce is just having the fucking ball of his life with that role. He is chewing the scenery. He is so bombastic. It's like watching Steve Jobs on crack. You know what I mean? It's just he's got this great sense of vibrancy and spectacle to him that you really do expect from a power hungry, fame hungry media mogul who's only concerned about himself and his ratings. He really does bring that character to life, and he's so enjoyable to watch. Just based on him, like going full ham with it and really playing it up. It, even if you totally can't buy the angle behind it, which is more than fair enough. He's honestly has held up really solidly. He's honestly a great villain. Can't say the same about Stamper. Want to know what about Stamper? He's German and he's a Red Grand clone. Other than that, I couldn't tell you anything. He's boring. So boring. But then there is Stamper's where is he? Ah yes, Dr. Kaufman. Why was this guy only in 5 minutes of the film? He should have been in the film longer. He's like one of the best parts of Tomorrow Never Dies because he manages to hit everything. He feels like a classic Bond villain, but he does manage to kind of fit into the modern Pierce Brosnan era. He's got the goofy charm of the older like villains of yore. You know, he's got this he's comedic he does have great comedic potential, but he still somehow manages to be pretty intimidating and cool and calculated in all honesty. And Vincent Schiavelli is so great in that role. The fact that this big 6 foot something Italian man is putting on this over exaggerated German accent that is such a cartoonish throwback to the old classic 60s era Bond villains, but there is still a little bit of intimidation and still a little bit of callousness to him that he actually manages to be really memorable. I could shoot you from Stuttgart and still create the proper effect. And it does lead to probably my absolute favorite um Brosnan era Bond moment of again the moment that sold me on Brosnan as Bond was him the shocking coffin with his car keys, and then he puts his gun up to his cheek, and Kaufman says, "Wait, I'm just a professional doing a job." And then Brosnan coldly just says, "Me too." Bang! Right then and there, I'm like, "Okay, Pierce, you done convinced me. You are Bond, my friend. You are absolutely James Bond. Bravo, bravo, good sir, bravo. You fucking earned your stripes." So yeah, Dr. Kaufman's fucking great. The only reason I'm not putting him in the best is he's only in the movie for 5 minutes, but goddamn, what a memorable 5 minutes it is. Um, anything else from Tomorrow Never Dies that I should know about? Oh yeah, Mr. Gupta, as it were. I couldn't tell you anything about this guy. I think he's just some like yogi hacker dude who's kind of like all in peace and everything. I couldn't fucking tell you at all, man. Um, that's about it. That's about it. Next up, The World Is Not Enough. Such a frustrating film because there are parts of The World Is Not Enough that I really, really enjoy. There are parts of The World Is Not Enough I really, really fucking despise. One of those is the main villainess, as it were, the main Bond girl, Electra King. She is absolutely fucking fantastic in this film. Couple reasons. One, I do like the fact that they decided to shake up the formula and make a Bond girl the actual main Bond villain. This idea of her getting kind of acquainted with Bond, but it feels very genuine enough, and then you know it all kind of goes planned. She's very calculating. She's very cunning. Fucking hot as hell, man. Sophie Marceau was oh me oh je t'aime. She was fucking something else. She still is something else. She's aged very well for herself. But on her performance, she brings that character to life, I think, because the chemistry between her and Pierce Brosnan is believable, is strong enough that you really do believe that Elektra and Bond really do genuinely love each other in a way that I think very few Bond girl relationships manage to effectively do, especially in The World Is Not Enough between Bond and fucking Denise Richards' character. Still need to get started on that. But she's believable enough as a very doe-eyed, innocent who needs help and feels some genuine connection with Bond. And then when the face heel turn happens, and she manages to pull off being very smug, very full of herself, very calculating, very cold, to where it doesn't seem jarring. Like she's a twist villain that actually works because once the twist happens, there's still enough time for her to actually be properly acclimated as a villain to where her villainy actually manages to have a palpable effect on the story and she's allowed to breathe that. Take fucking note, Disney! But anyways, um, yeah, I've got nothing bad to say about fucking Elektra. She's honestly one of the best Bond villains and one of the best Bond girls all in one. She's easily my favorite part of The World Is Not Enough. Um, Hands down. She's fantastic. I know there's been this big discussion of is she really the main villain? Well, let's talk about the other guy, Renard. Um, oh boy. I will say this much about Renard. I do like the idea behind Renard. You know, the science behind him not being able to feel anything is tenuous at best, in my opinion. There's a bullet lodged in his frontal lobe. That guy should be a fucking vegetable right now. You know, him not having the ability to feel pain, the fact that he is the dragon and he's also the lover of the main villain, the fact that she fell in love with him through Stockholm syndrome, so it's a very kind of hopelessly forlorn and very dark sort of romance between the two. I think all of that is really interesting. And I do think he has some memorable lines. His performance really does kind of get on me. It's like, Robert Carlyle is not a bad actor at all. Um, so I don't know, but I don't know what it is about his performance, whether it was the inflictions that he did or whether it was the direction that he was given, but there's something about his performance as Renard that comes off as so stilted and awkward and kind of um uh, there's something about it that just it loses the intimidation factor from who Renard is as a character. He doesn't come off as intimidating. There's this awkwardness to him that kind of detracts from the nature of who he actually is. Again, I don't know if it's the direction he was given, if it's his performance or what have you, but there's something about him. There's something about his character because on paper the character is a really solid concept, but in execution, there's something so stilted about his performance and how he comes off that really he does end up being the lesser villain of the two. And it's a shame in all honesty, so I'd probably um where are you? Yeah, I mean, if his performance was better, I would easily put him a tier higher, but it is what it is. Next up, fuck, I forgot who this dude was. I forget his name, but I know who he was. He was Zukovsky's associate that double crossed on him. That's played by some British DJ named Goldie, who's got gold teeth. Dude can't fucking act to save his life. I know they're trying to go for a smug character, but he just can't pull it off. He's awful. And then I don't know what her name was, but she was in the opening boat chase sequence. She was decent enough as as like a threat, but I'll be honest, I never care for the opening chase sequence in The World Is Not Enough. I don't care for boat chases myself, and that went on for way too goddamn long. Even though I can appreciate some of the creativity that went into the stunts and the special effects and how everything was set up. Yeah, just not my thing. Now we come to the absolute nadir of Bond films for many people, Die Another Day. A film so bad that Eon Productions had to reboot the entire series after it. Here's the thing. I think the first half of Die Another Day isn't that bad in all honesty. There are some cringeworthy moments, there are some stupid scenes, but generally the idea of Bond getting captured, him leaving MI6 because his country viewed him as expendable, him trying to go his own way, as it were, and figure everything out on his own. All of that is really, really solid and interesting. And I actually do think that most of the setup isn't too egregious. There's nothing too stupid about it. Once they introduce the invisible car and you get to the Ice Palace, it all fucking plateaus. That's when everything it just goes horrible, is the entire second half when the fucking Ice Palace shows up and the invisible car and everything. That's when all the stupid shit hits the fan. Sorry, that's when, all the idiotic decisions happen. There's one good scene after that. One good scene. Everything else is so irredeemably awful in its execution. Um, so, hold on one second after this rant. All right, so let's start off with the main villain, Gustav Graves, who apparently was a Okay, like the idea behind Gustav Graves as a character isn't too awful. I think a lot of it is pretty ridiculous on the face of it. The fact that this guy managed to rise up in the ranks in a year, managed to get knighted by the queen and everything and all that, but whatever. I don't think Toby Stevens does that bad of a job as the at his performance. He's very smug, he's very smarmy, he's very British. I heard this guy ended up becoming the audiobook narrator for a lot of James Bond books, and I could totally see him fit into that role like a glove. He does have the cadence necessary to kind of play this counterpart of Bond. But then the fact that they give the revelation that this guy used to be the North Korean general from the beginning of the movie, who somehow managed to go undercover, race swap himself somehow, completely change his identity from the ground up, and rise to the ranks that he did in knighthood in less than a year. It's just like, fucking what? Honestly, not only is it such a retarded fucking twist when you think about it, not even just for the science implications or anything that could be misconstrued as what have you, but there's just something about him that feels so inauthentic. He's so naturally British, which I know is such a complaint to have, but the fact that this North Korean general can not only look like a British guy and pass off 100% flawlessly, but somehow act like he was born British, and with no explanation whatsoever, all of it is just fucking stupid. And then you get to the final confrontation where he's dressed up in that stupid looking techno harness with like the power gloves and everything and he's got a button on his mech suit that shocks himself for some inexplicable what the actual fuck, man. There is one thing saving him from being at the bottom of the barrel for me, and that is the scene between him and Bond at the fencing academy where they're just sniping at each other, and he loses all that sense of pretense and just tries to go full ham and kill Bond, and then acts all smug like it's a friendly game after he's been rightly bested over it. That's the only part where he actually does come off as a legitimate, intimidating sort of presence. Everything else, oh god, just the stupid of it all. Um, Next up is Miranda Frost. She aight. I know that a lot of people kind of look on her fondly with her cold, calculating personality. Ha ha. Rosamund Pike actually does a pretty good job, especially considering it was her first film. Credit, believe it or not, look it up. It's true. Um, she's proven herself to be a good actress since then. she's all right. I'm not gonna say she's a good villain. She's certainly a better Bond girl than fucking Jinx is, but you know, not too bad. Um, oh yeah, this guy was in The World Is Not Enough as one of the guys. Who cares? He has no presence. Just notice that. But back to The World Is Not Enough. Zhao. I actually think Zhao is honestly a legitimately is kind of an underrated villain. He does come off as very generic, but the whole thing of between him not really having the facial structure, the facial reconstruction kind of down pat, so he's got that eerie kind of pale skin tone to him, and okay, the bedded diamonds do look a bit stupid, but the guy who plays him actually isn't a bad actor. He is legitimately intimidating in his performance. He does act pretty he acts like a typical henchman, but he's a convincing typical henchman. Great facial acting and body language acting. He isn't again the only good part of the latter half of the movie. The ice chase between Bond and his Aston Martin and the weaponized Jaguar XKR in the ice. The only again the only good part of the movie. He's part of that, and that does count for something in my book. So yeah, I'd honestly say he's pretty good. Sue me. I don't know. Next, and then finally, Mr. Kill. Really, Mr. Kill. Okay. All right. Now the Brosnan era is over. Now we move on to the Daniel Craig era. Let's start with Casino Royale, which is my absolute favorite Bond film of all time, probably to nobody's shock. I love Casino Royale. Love it. And let's start off with Le Chiffre. Yeah, he goes up there. He is such a great fucking villain in that movie. Like the idea of him, him not even being like the main bad guy. He's just this guy who got himself in a bad position, being a financial broker who can't actually finance anything. That's a great twist, but again, he's got everything that a good villain needs. He's cold, he's calculating, no remorse whatsoever. Mads Mikkelsen does an amazing fucking job as Le Chiffre. I mean, no wonder that guy ended up playing Hannibal Lecter. He brings something else to that fucking character. And it's not just that he's smarmy and and he doesn't have any bark to back up his bite with. No, he could be fucking intimidating when he needs to be. The torture scene of him fucking hitting Bond in the junk with that makeshift flail while he's naked in the chair. I mean, just ugh, just thinking about that makes my skin crawl. Fucking horrifying. Um, yeah, I wish I had more thoughts to really compartmentalize and say about him, but I got nothing bad to say about him. He's phenomenal. Next up is where is he? Mr. White. He's pretty good at Casino Royale. I do like the fact that he is kind of the end of the man behind the strings. The guy who plays him does a really solid job. He does show back up in Skyfall. I do kind of I appreciate what they were doing with him in Skyfall. Probably one of the last positive things you're going to say about me. You're going to hear from me saying not Skyfall, Spectre. Sorry, Spectre. I appreciate what they were trying to do with him in Spectre, and via V, this is probably one of the few positive things I'm going to say about Spectre. So be warned when we get to Spectre. Um, I do appreciate what they were trying to do with him in Spectre. I don't think they succeeded like they wanted to um with it, but but I can appreciate the effort. He's pretty solid, I would say. Not quite as memorable as Le Chiffre is, but it's still a great presence in the film. Um Demetrios. That was who was that guy? What did Demetrios do? Oh yeah, he's the guy that took that Bond won the Aston keys off of, and he was that's about it really. All I just remember is him getting his ass kicked by Bond in the poker game. He's fine. I have nothing else to say about him other than he's fine. Uh, this guy. I don't remember his name. I do remember he's in the opening black and white monologue scene. I don't remember much about him. No, actually, I do remember quite a bit about him. He's only in the movie for like 3 minutes or so, but he still does a pretty solid job of establishing it as Bond's like first kind of double O kill, as it were. I don't know. He really does set the tone. He's memorable in his own way. And then this guy was the guy that Bond was chasing in the on foot parkour sequence in Nigeria. I want to say early in the movie, Madagascar. That was it. He's pretty good. Doesn't have much dialogue, but again, he did a memorable chase scene, so there is that. Pretty solid. Next up, Quantum of Solace. Know a lot of people hate Quantum. I can totally understand why. I think Quantum of Solace is a bad film. I don't think it's nearly as bad as other people say it is. The editing does give me a headache. The theme song is fucking ear poison. The story is goddamn stupid. Um, I do give it some slack for the fact that it's not a completed film, that it was made in during the writer's strike, and as a result, they didn't have the time necessary to kind of smooth out the things that needed to get smoothed out with how the the story needed to be. Does excuse all the other shit, but I'm willing to give the script a pass. But it's still a pretty bad movie in all honesty. Um, Definitely, I appreciate the fact that that was the wake up call for the studio to be like, okay, let's try and slow our roll a little bit. And honestly, I do give it more leeway just because it doesn't have a finished script, whereas all the other Bond films that I hate more than it all had completed scripts that were approved by legitimate human beings that can read and write and speak and all that sort of stuff. And their scripts are fucking terrible, really. So yeah, I give Quantum of Solace a little bit of leeway. Just a little bit. Still awful though. And yeah, Dominic is awful. Um there's nothing about this guy that's intimidating at all. There's not. He's such a pathetic pansy ass little bitch. Really, there's nothing scary, there's nothing smug, there's nothing enjoyable about him. He is so fucking pathetic as a villain that it's almost almost ridiculous. I actually did hear a couple of people defend this guy. Well, not a couple, maybe a couple people have the same sentiment, but I definitely saw it on the Year Mileage May Vary page of TV tropes. You know, TV tropes being the festering hive of scum and villainy that it is, the epicenter of cancer and cringe, besides third only behind Twitter and Tumblr. No, fourth behind Twitter, Tumblr, and Reddit, actually. So I love pissing people off. But I actually saw one person defend Dominic Green by saying that, his motivations make him a better villain because now that we know that there are actual companies that actually drain up all the water and then sell it back to people for a profit with scummy capitalism, that he's not nearly that bad of a villain nowadays. And that was one of the complaints that I do remember from contemporaneous reviews back then, was that, oh, his plan is so fucking ludicrous. Oh, his plan makes absolutely no sense. Who would actually do that? And now that we know some of the things that we know, we're like, okay, maybe it's not. But that's such a piss poor argument to me. It's like, well, people actually do what he does in real life, so he's not that bad of a villain. Okay, so his motivations aren't as ridiculous and nonsensical and far-fetched as they were back when the film was released. That means that his motivations are that only means that his motivations don't come off contrived and ludicrous. That doesn't mean it suddenly improves him as a legitimate fucking villain. He's still fucking pathetic. You're talking about a guy who acts smarmy and smug without any charm whatsoever throughout the entire film, and then when he finally does snap, he acts as his own butt trying to kill Bond. You take him seriously. How is that a credible threat to fucking anybody? Much less the most famous fucking corporate, fucking government espionage agent in the entire world. It is such a ludicrous fucking proposal to it that, okay, his motivations are a little bit clearer. Thanks to hindsight. What the fucking shit? He still doesn't stand on his own as an actual threat. He's still fucking pathetic. And he's always going to be fucking pathetic. It's that fucking simple. God. Let's see. What else? Um, General Guy, yeah, I don't really know about him. Guy named Elvis. Elvis, apparently, yes. Oh yeah, that's the main villain, that's the main villain's like right hand man or something. Fucking Elvis. He's fucking sad too, because he has nothing memorable about him. He's not intimidating. He's not a physical challenge to Bond. He's not memorable about him. The only thing memorable about him, the defect that they gave him, the visual indicator to try and prove that he's a henchman, is that they gave him this stupid looking bowl cut. Like, that's it. That's your main. That's how you differentiate your lame ass henchman for your lame ass villain, is just make him look like some bizarro version of fucking Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber? Really? It's so fucking sad. Um, that guy was in Casino Royale as well. Hey, he's all right. Got a cool look. That's about it. Let's move on to Skyfall next. I like Skyfall. I think it does have a couple things that barely keep it out of the top five for me, but it's still pretty solid overall. First up is Silva, who I'm going to I'll put him in the top tier villain section. I will say this much about Silva. He's not really on paper the most interesting villain. I mean, a terrorist organization, a terrorist that causes chaos and acts of terrorism throughout the world because he's an agent of chaos and wants to cause disruption throughout the entire world and prove a point. Where the fuck have I heard this before? Yeah, he's again one of these really these he's again one of these obvious clones that people were that after Heath Ledger's turn as the Joker in The Dark Knight, everyone was trying to create the next fucking Joker. Everyone was trying to there was a ton of people basically having their villains be like angry social anarchists who are just creating chaos for the sake of a point and to say something about the human condition because, ooh, they're so deep and so revolutionary. Whatever. So, whatever. And I'll be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of Heath Ledger's Joker myself. Sorry to say, I can easily get into why at a later video at a later date and discuss all the problems, but definitely the legacy that Heath Ledger's Joker left on cinema history with everyone trying to copy him and failing miserably. And Silva does kind of fall into that category, I would say, but there's a couple differences. One, he's a much better Ren than those guys, so there is that. Two, I do like the fact that he has a much more personal reason for wanting to create chaos and try and undermine the governments is because he's trying to undermine MI6 for what he feels is basically being viewed as an expendable resource. You know, the fact that he does have that creepy facial defect, him just like pulling out his dentures to show the cyanide pills, which okay, cyanide doesn't work that way in real life, but still the image of that his damaged face saying "Look upon your work, mother." And the fact of the matter is that it's fucking Javier Bardem playing him, and even though he does get a goose egg occasionally, Bardem is such a great villain actor. Doesn't matter what villain he plays, the dude just nails bad guys like nobody's business. You give him an antagonistic role or like a villainous antagonistic role to play, and he will fucking play it to the absolute peak efficiency that he can. He's awesome. He 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 really does elevate Silva quite a bit from his kind of humble roots, I imagine, and he creates probably the last great Bond villain, in my opinion, as should be for the last great Bond film so far. So that's why he's in top tier. Think this is his dragon. Oh yeah, because he had the fucking full auto Glock with the depleted uranium rounds. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, all right. That's all I remember is that he had that weapon to him. Yeah, that's it. Spectre. Fuck Spectre. That's all I can say is just fuck Spectre. Ugh, Spectre is such a fucking horrible ass film. Wasting an hour and 50 minutes of my goddamn time, and then in the last 35 minutes of the film, you pull stuff out of your ass that makes absolutely no sense and completely borks everything up. Uh, and let us start with not Blofeld, Brofeld. Um, fuck this guy. I so legitimately hate the stupid revelation, the stupid twist that not only is Oberhauser Blofeld of all people, but that Blofeld is Bond's brother, and everything that happened in the previous three films was all a part of Spectre's grand plan to ruin Bond's life. Even though it makes absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever, completely contradicts the events of all the previous films beforehand. The fact that there's no need to make him Blofeld in the first place, you're literally only doing it for the infamy that he has outside the silver screen to integrate him into this screen, and you do it with all the subtlety of a fucking sledgehammer. And the fact that you have reduced one of the greatest, not maybe not one of the greatest, one of the most memorable hero villain dynamics ever to some poor man's bastardized version of goddamn Cain and Abel is nothing short of reprehensibly awful. And the absolute retardation and fucking jacked idiocy of this idea. This shit was played for laughs in Austin goddamn Powers. This kind of thing was pulled off as a joke. And they're trying to play this shit fucking seriously. It is absolutely astounding just how inept it actually fucking is. And it really doesn't help. It really does not help that all of this could be redeemed with a good performance. But there is no good performance in here. You know, Christoph Waltz is a great fucking actor. I mean, the dude rose to prominence and won all the awards by playing a Nazi officer in a Tarantino film. This dude knows how to be a good villain, a damn good villain. And he does absolutely fucking nothing with Brofeld. He underplays goddamn everything. He sounds bored out of his mind half the fucking time. He has no emotion, not even in a way that makes sense, but just in a way that makes it sound like he's waiting at the DMV or something. And just everything about this performance combined with the stupidity of the writing and how they thoroughly assassinated the character of Blofeld beforehand makes fucking sense. It doesn't. The only redeeming factor is his appearance in No Time to Die. The very sort of the his appearance in No Time to Die is actually much better because Waltz puts in a much better performance. The writing is much stronger as far as the motivations and everything that he goes through. The chemistry he has with Daniel Craig actually comes off as believably antagonistic. He actually does come off as legitimately, intimidating and sociopathic in the way that the filmmakers were trying to do, but fucking couldn't because of the goddamn stupid twist. His appearance in No Time to Die is the only thing that is keeping him from scraping the bottom of the barrel. The only thing. Because otherwise, fuck Brofeld. And if you don't have a problem with Brofeld, then fuck you too. Anyway, what else? Let's move on to the other villains before I lose my mind. This this guy, the Mr. C, as it were. Not intimidating at all. He's telegraphed from a mile away in terms of what his role actually is. He's and just this isn't just a problem with him. The fucking dialogue in Skyfall, I've noticed, is so goddamn atrocious. Well, I figured out what M stands for, moron. What are you, fucking 8 years old, dude? Jesus goddamn Christ! Who the fuck actually wrote this shit? Oh, I am so sick of people. Oh, Jesus. I bet you anything was because of the fucking Avengers. The day we move away from Joss Whedon's fucking stupid, cringy meta humor and stop trying to ape his 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 fucking dialogue in the Avengers, the happier we shall all fucking be. I'm convinced of it. So, what else? Oh, Mr. Hinks. Yes, once again, another big, tough, mute badass. He's fine in my opinion. He's absolutely fine. The reason I say he's fine is because there's nothing wrong with, again, a big, mute badass character. Dave Bautista does the physical part of it well. You know, I haven't seen much of Bautista as an actor, but I can honestly say that the few bits and pieces I have seen, he does a really solid fucking job acting. He is probably the best former wrestler turned actor that I've ever seen in my entire life. he's honestly a really fucking underrated guy, and I think he should be getting a lot more roles to really kind of expand on what he can do. So, but to me, this guy, the guy, Mr. Hanks, just it kind of feels underwhelming for him because it's not really taking advantage. Like, oh, look at that! You hired the former pro wrestler to play the big mute brick shithouse whose only job is to look scary and fucking throw the hero around like a rag doll. Cool, gold fucking star. Anybody could fucking do that. So I mean, he's better than the other villains in the film, but at the same time, I also feel that it's also just kind of a he's just kind of a there character, you know, a bit underutilized and really, you've got a guy who I do think is legitimately talented, just playing this kind of generic role, as it were. Kind of sucks, actually. Um, yeah, that's about it for. Oh yeah, and there's also this guy from the opening. He's just kind of there. He's just there. No Time to Die. Um, don't really care for No Time to Die myself. Just gonna say that. Stupid plot revelations. Just trying way too hard to be morose and grim and all that sort of shit. Yeah, I don't really care for it. Don't really care for it whatsoever. Not my thing. Um, I don't know who any of these other guys are. Yeah, I don't recognize any of these guys, and if I don't recognize them, then they're all just kind of going in the section. Yeah, I have no idea who any of these other guys are. Must not have been wholly memorable. Oh wait, no, I remember this dude. This dude was from License to Kill. He was the smarmy yuppie tax guy that got his just desserts. Got gunned down by Sanchez for complaining about the finances and everything. He's all right. He's there. Yeah, everybody else I don't recognize. Sorry that I didn't give these guys their dues, as it were. But fuck it. Let's talk about Safin because apparently he's the only villain on there. The other villains are good. The leaving aside the stupid selective virus gimmick, which I absolutely fucking detest. The idea of him, just another guy trying to like avenge his family by trying to take down the organization that he feels responsible for, just like Trevelyan. He has some kind of interesting moments here and there, mostly between him and Madeline. Um, for the most part, but uh, he's honestly not that great of a villain. Again, most of it boils down to his performance. Like, I don't know what the fuck was going on with his performance. I know Rami Malek is a much better actor than he fucking lets on, and he could do these kind of weird, awkward, antagonistic roles really well. I mean, fucking Josh from Until Dawn, hell, even Snafu from The Pacific. I've seen this guy can do kind of this sort of, you know, barely on the edge, awkward, stunted, kind of disconnected, not psycho, but sort of role. But again, I don't know what it is about his performance, or if it's the directing, or if it's the writing, or what have you. But there's something about him that doesn't come off as intimidating. It doesn't come off as interesting. It doesn't come off as scary or villainous or whatever. it's so awkward to watch. His mannerisms, the way he speaks, the way he comes off, it's just I just look at it like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? I don't get it at all. So yeah, there's that. Yep. Another tier list goes by. Another tier list done. Probably reaching about 4 hours now. 3 hours. 3.5 hours. Let's meet in the middle of 3.5. But yeah, that's about it. That is my ranking of all the James Bond villains that this guy had. That I did my best to the abilities. So yeah, thanks all so much for watching this video. Go check out my other stuff, my other tier list videos as you wish, if you wish to inflict yourself even further with that stuff. And until next time, guys, take care, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.